Hello, back for week 8. And after much thought, I've decided to go ahead with the original micro lesson format. So everyone will submit scripts. It's what you want from the survey. Most of you are not interested in doing the micro lesson in the class. I'll work out nearer the time our face-to-face classes, what exactly we use the class time for. But at the moment, I'm planning for those who want to practice their activities to try them. And that will not be graded. It will not affect your grade. It'll just give you a chance to see what works, how it works, and what doesn't, and how things can be improved. Because the goal of this class is really to help you build some confidence leading a class or an activity, and of course, because it's in English, helping build confidence using English as well. And that would be great to do during our face-to-face classes. Now, I think it was mostly English and many music students, but that'll be open for anyone. But more on that nearer week 12. For now, you will see on the stream 2 new posts. The first one, it says post a new assignment micro lesson. Now, this is to help you prepare for the micro lesson. And I've got 3 different files. The first one is a model micro lesson script. Now, I've never given a model script like this before micro lessons because I find that any examples that I give, students copy, which is not what I want. So I've deliberately given you a slightly unusual micro lesson. Now you'll see at the top, I've said, sample micro lesson script. Whenever I use ML, that means micro lesson. My language focus, everyone has a language focus, every single lesson that we do together. And that's usually vocabulary, but it could also be grammar. Mine is rhyming words, so that's my vocabulary. And I'm also looking at phonemes that we've talked about several times as the different sounds in English. And I'm looking at 2 contrasting phonemes. Now, these are the IPA symbols, the International Phonetic Alphabet symbols for t and th and and l. So I'm comparing these to make sure students can distinguish through hearing the difference and distinguish through correct pronunciation the difference. Lesson goals. Everyone should state their lesson goals, what you plan to achieve in your lesson. And it should be based around the language that you are reviewing. So I've said here to consolidate or to deepen the learning of students' recognition of rhyming words and the phonemes to th, l, then to practice their pronunciation. So just like I said here, that's just expanding on that. Keep lesson goals short. You don't need to say to motivate students, to build confidence, etc. Just focus on the key language goals. Sometimes you need some context info. So I've added other info because I can't see your lesson, because you're not in the classroom. You need to tell us if there's things that students need in terms of material, or where, if there's a special situation for the class, or things that they need to know before doing this lesson. So I've added here as a listening and pronunciation lesson. Now, if we go back to micro lessons on Weebly, you'll remember that there's different types of lesson, and I've given 5 categories, going from easy, that's crafts, A, B, C, D, E, through to listening and phonemic awareness. That's the adjective of phoneme, which is recognizing the different pairs of sounds like that. So I'm doing this kind of lesson. Now, once again, I've never given a model before because students are more likely to copy it. But do not copy this because every one of those 5 are quite different lessons. They follow a similar idea in that you're reviewing vocabulary, but each one is doing it in a different way. So for example, with crafts, I've said review your language. That's the preparation activity, the P activity. And if you go to Teacher Toolbox, you'll see example P activities. They're short ways to just provide recall of the words or grammar that students need to complete the activity successfully. Once again, this is not teaching, meaning it's not the first time your students have seen and heard the words that you're using for the activity. It's reviewing or recall, as I like to call it, recalling, just jogging their memories, right? So if we go back to this, right, so this one is about listening and pronunciation and, or sorry, rewind. So crafts, preparation, then making the craft. Now that is a little different to the other ones. Other activities, other types, categories of micro lesson do not have crafts. This is the only one. It's first because it's quite easy to give the directions on how to make something. And when you click on this craft file, these are example crafts. And you would give directions like this, probably more. This file is just to show you how many simple directions are required, but you will add more, especially when you're paraphrasing, adding questions, etc. And you're doing it with students. You're doing it at the same time. And that's why it's usually first, because you can see what students understand because they're copying you, and what they don't understand because they're not copying you. And that teaches you the importance of using visuals and demonstrating, of course. Then you make your craft, typically 5 minutes in a real class, and then use it in a short game. So that is the same as the core activity. And these are example core activities under C. For the crafts, because you're making a craft and you're giving directions for that, you don't need to do a follow-up. I'm not asking for a follow-up because then your lesson gets too long. So that's what makes crafts unique. Grammar also has review, preparation activity, and a core activity, right? Use it in use it in a game. And there are examples in the file that you can click on. Of course, if you're doing this on your phone, you might not see the hyperlinks, but most of these are hyperlinks which show you different core activities that you could do. And then assess students. Now that, of course, means doing the follow-up. So when you go here, you see F, and that's a quick way to check that students now understand the grammar and the vocabulary that you reviewed with them in your lesson. Okay, how are we doing so far? Right, so that's grammar. Now grammar is the more typical layout. Preparation, core, follow-up, right? Now, when you get on to C and D, you'll see I've said here, when using songs, books, and videos, you need 3 parts. And instead of calling them preparation, core, follow-up, it's before watching, which is similar to preparation, while watching, or reading, or listening, or singing, which is different to the other lessons, because if you just play a video and say, watch this, or listen to this song, chances are children won't. And you want them to focus their attention on the key words that your activity needs for success. We'll talk more about that before the song and story activities, but yeah, that's different. And then after watching, which is more similar to a core activity, meaning it's the main activity, and yeah, I'll need to change this as well, but it's the main activity and it's the one you spend the most time on. And I probably will not require you to do a follow-up because you've already got 3 parts like these two. So that's the same layout for C and D. And for E, again, which is similar to my model lesson like this, I've chosen the most difficult type of lesson that students find most difficult, called Phonemic Awareness. And we'll go into that more later. I think it's a good time to show you the type of lesson it is. And what's different about it is, instead of just focusing on preparation core follow-up, you might do several short activities because there are lots of quick 1-minute type activities that you can do with students, which just build understanding, focusing on contrasting sounds like these. So instead of doing a list of words that you might do for the example vocabulary review activities here, or crafts or grammar, you're doing contrasting sounds. Can students hear and pronounce the difference between p and b, and t and d, and and u? And we're not doing spelling. Spelling is not important for these. So I've said there, avoid writing or showing the letters or words, because then what you're doing is something called phonological awareness. Phonology is the study of sounds, and phonics, this first type of sounds that kindergarten and elementary school students, grade 3, do, is pronouncing the sound and seeing the letter that suggests that sound. Phonemic awareness is easier, I think, because you're focused on the sound. Because when you look at the letters as well, things become confusing. Because the I letter can be can be E, it changes where, depending on the position in the word, you know, like ice cream, it's I, phonics is etc. So this lesson is purely you, the teacher, speaking, and children, students, listening and pronouncing. So it's more, it requires better listening and feedback from the teacher. You can't just memorize a list of instructions for making something and give it, which I know you are good at. And that's why some students have trouble with this. So that's why I've given that as an example, if I find it again, as our midterm assessment. What I've done is listed, I've also said, by the way, suitable for grade 5. You might add that so that I know, because grade 3, 4 lessons are usually quite different to grade 5 and 6 lessons. So give me a guide to where you think that might be. Grade 3 and 4 are focused more on phonics and sounds, simple ones. Grades 5 and 6 go more heavily into grammar. So I've listed, I think I've got 5 activities here. So activity 1, and I've said here, you always start with the easiest things. Building confidence, recalling words. Activity 2 builds on that information with a game. Activity 3, more challenging, more difficult. Again, building on the key goals of the sound of the class. So I'm using and which is more difficult for students, especially to pronounce. And then I've added a 4th activity, even more challenging. And I've also given you the groups of words and sentences to demonstrate the differences in the sounds. So there's a t versus th and l versus I've also provided optional extra activities. Why? Well, I've said there, if time allows, you might do these. So it's difficult to plan how long this will take. You're going to have problems that you didn't plan for. Every lesson is different, and you might spend more time in certain sections depending on how students are progressing. So it's good to have a plan B or some optional extras. And you've said there, or some students need more practice. Maybe they're not quite getting the difference between t and th. So I've added some other types of activities to help them build awareness of the difference. And I've also added another exercise here, pronunciation practice. So it says here, practice pronunciation with your teacher or in pairs. Having spare extra activities that students can do in pairs or very small groups, like groups of 3, is good because they can do them independently from you. So they can do them alone. And you can work on, so the students who have finished it quickly are obviously usually the ones who know the difference and can pronounce the difference. So they continue with this more challenging activity, and you give your help to the students who are not progressing, who are not doing so well. Okay, now in terms of length, scripts. So I've got here 1, 2, 3 pages, and that's the 4th page there. That would be a good. And considering I've added all my examples, it's usually best that you submit your micro lesson all in one paper. Some of you might have a PowerPoint or something, in which case you submit the PowerPoint too. But of course, you can save PowerPoint slides is in the Word document and present it as one. Also include, like I've included tables here. Did I have cards? Right, so I've got cards there. You might include the cards that you would have used in your lesson at the bottom as well. And show me any materials that you might need. You can submit it as a document, an HWP file, Google Doc, any of these work. If you submit it as a Google Doc, I can put feedback comments directly into the document. If you do it this way, usually I will, well, during our digital classes, I will be annotating and going over and telling you what's good, what you could change. And this review will be available not just to you, the script writer, but to everyone. It's for everyone to learn and grow with the problems that we're having along the way. All right. Now, before I get into this in more detail, I'll show you some examples of scripts that I've received in the past. Now, your paper is a little different. Last semester, they just submitted it like this in a blank paper. Yours will be, let me see, or if we go back to this, right. So I've got that's the model micro lesson script. I'll show you a micro lesson script. So when you click on this one, this is the folder where you will upload your files. I believe only you can see and view the files. I can't remember, we'll check on that later. But upload them so that I can access them and give you feedback there. Let me close that a second. And I've also given you the digital rubric. Now, the word rubric is really just a teacher word for feedback paper. I use this to give you feedback on your lesson. So I'll be typing comments in here and I will upload it to Google Docs, I think, for you to read, or I'll send it to you directly. I'm not sure I'll do that yet. But the main thing is that you are aware of everything that's required of you for the micro lesson. And I've divided it into those three sections: language, which is the largest section, TEE, which is about what you do, and activities, how you do that. So you'll see there's 10 different groups. 5 of them are language, 2 are TEE, and 3 are activities. 2 points each, which is the same as your midterm assessment. First question I've asked here is, did you review a suitable number of words and word groups? Well, what is a suitable number? Typically around 20 words for our 15, 20, 30-minute lesson. That could be one group of 20 words, like 20 colors, or it could be 2 groups, like colors and numbers, so 10 colors, 10 numbers, or it could be 3 groups, usually a maximum of about 4 groups of 5 or 6 words each. So you're aiming for around 20 words. If you only do 10, the lesson is too easy, too boring, you finish too quickly. If you do 40, it's too difficult, too long. But obviously it depends on the difficulty of the word group. So numbers should be easier. So you might have the numbers 1 to 20 and seasons or something else. Use simple, clear, short directions, right? We've talked about that. And that was in the micro lesson. Where was it? Let me find it. Right, so that was under number 3, simplify. Are you doing these things? All right. Close that again. Give and get examples. So that means you give an example. Like today, we're going to look at colors. For example, red and green. Then you can get examples. What other colors do you know? So you're telling and asking. And that you can do that for vocabulary, any groups, like we're going to look at seasons, what words are in this group, and grammar, of course, as well. Did you ask the different question types? And again, you will find that in the, well, you'll find it in the DNUE page, of course. We covered things about paraphrasing last class. So are you using the different types of paraphrasing to allow maximum exposure to English? Now, if I try and find this again, I think we had it here. Get rid of that. This is my examples, and these are the 5 types that I expect you to use in your script. You should be using all of these. Like we said here, you might use it for 60, 70% of what your original script is. There's only occasionally that you cannot paraphrase. There's nothing more to say. So an especially important one that I look for is turning statements into questions. You don't always have to give the statement first. You can ask, of course, but questions are good. All right, what else? Now, I've also added in here under TEE, used teacher techniques. Now, that, as it said, it's on Weebly. So when you go here, it's on most of the pages, I think. Did I add it in this page? No. Well, micro lesson, teacher toolbox, techniques. These are short things that you can use in any activity in your class, right? It's not the same as activity. It's something you use during your lesson. And these are some examples. Try to integrate them. Try to use these or several of these during your micro lesson. So that's what this part was here. Use materials, examples, cards, realia, right? We talked about that last week. Cards are probably the most important one, the most adaptable one for letters, numbers, parts of words, pictures, matching, colors. But any kind of materials you use are counted here. And the activities. Did you review the words that students need for the core activities? Did you do a suitable core activity, or was it too easy, too difficult, didn't cover your key language? And did you assess students with a follow-up activity? Now, I said this is not in crafts, so don't worry about that. And that is what I use to give you feedback on your micro lesson. So you don't need to fill in this. You do need to fill in this though. You need to tell me what your goals are, any information that's important, your major, and any word group names like colors and cardinal numbers like 1, 2, 3. When you complete the script, now you're not completing this, all you're doing is starting here and typing in your preparation activity directions, in this case making a craft for crafts, and your core activity. And for crafts, there's no follow-up activity, hence why it is light color here. And this is where you're going to do 2, 3, 4 pages of script, right? And materials. Make sure when you upload your file that you include first your major, like Math A or education, your student number, your name in Korean, or you could just use whatever you've got on Google Classroom, or both, your name and the Google Classroom name, because some of you have a different name there, and the micro lesson type, like crafts or grammar or songs or stories or listening. Okay,